She is leading them into a new feminine strength in Ireland that is very, very exciting.
So would you say that she's allowing a more of a mystical tradition into what would be a normally very dogmatic tradition, and allowing that direct experience of that? Is she invoked in that way, or how is she invoked, or what is?
Well, the Irish Catholicism was basically ignored by Rome for centuries, and so it grew up out of its animistic pagan past into a very unusual form of Catholicism. When Rome finally showed up, they found this like lively, creative, artistic happening.
A lot of dancing.
Kind of Catholicism that really, they didn't have celibacy, you know, they didn't have, they loved to drink, you know, they were pretty much, you know, living life. And so there's always a mystical undercurrent in Irish Catholicism. And with Bridget is actually not that mystical. She's very earthy and present. They speak of her in the present tense. The Sisters of St. Bridget speak of her in the present tense. And they actually say, well, what would Bridget do? You know, and the answers are intelligent and related to real life and what real people really need.
Fabulous.
She's a crossover figure for the Catholics and the Protestants in Ireland, and between the Catholics and the pagans in Ireland.
There's another level of this, if we can call it a crossover, a resurrection of the goddess, which is what is the most important feminine, female, not necessarily feminine, but female symbol in the world is Mary.
Right.
And Mary, periodically, if you kind of track Christianity, there are whole centuries which are the cult of Mary, and we're in one.
Right.
And at the moment, you know, this argument in Rome is, should Mary be given absolutely, totally equal status with Jesus?
Wow, really?
Which basically Mary got around the 12th century, and then the church freaked.
Right.
Because with the cult of Mary that the church supports comes the rise of women that historically the church didn't support. But we're now at a place where we have, again, the rise of Mary in a world with very powerful feminine figures. So in an odd way, rather than necessarily be limited to the pre-Christian goddesses, there is this giant goddess that I don't think has been really utilized by all the people like yourselves, who are bringing back older forms as well.
Well, my problem with that, and it's maybe a small one, maybe it can be overcome, is that there is a little bit of dysfunction in that vision of Mary, because what is her big claim to fame? She's a virgin. Right, and so that it tends to vilify any type of...
No, but that isn't her claim to fame. Her claim to fame is that she understands that people suffer and that people do the best they can. Who forgives you? Not your Father, who art in heaven, and not his Son, who's become kind of his right-hand man for carrying out judgment. So you're left with someone to intercede with you. And this is where the whole cult of Mary in the 12th century got going. Those whole Notre Dames was, when you died, you said, look, Mary, put in a good word for me. Because otherwise, I'm going to hell because I have had impure thoughts. Man, I had impure thoughts. So here is a very different goddess with a very different possible agenda.
I'd like to add something about Mary. As you said that, you know, her claim to fame not being the fact that she was a virgin, as I see it and have experienced it in my dance and experienced the energy of Mother Mary, the experience that has come through has felt like Mary understood creation. And the reason why it was an immaculate conception is because she was whole and complete within herself, and she birthed her reflection in form. Jesus was everything. He was her lover, her son, he was the father, he was her divine male aspect integrated within herself that became her reflection.
And the mystery schools play more on that cosmic marriage. You don't see that with the current cults of the Mary, but in the old mystical school, it was more played on, just what you said. It was that Christ and Mary were like more a cosmic couple.
Equal.
Right, exactly.
The ancient paradigm of the mother and the son, and then becoming the lovers.
Right.
Yeah, it goes way back, the oldest creation myths.
And the resurrection.
Yeah,
So when are we going to be seeing the new Mass?
The New Mass. Well,
that
that's already
is-
started
that
is
this
happening.
marriage.
Matthew Fox,
is
exactly.
doing it on every month. Every month, Matthew Fox is doing it. A defrocked. He was a Dominican or what? Not a Dominican.
No,
but
a Jesuit.
Jesuit. He
Yeah.
was a Jesuit. Defrocked Jesuit. He's written what? 26 books. Do you know Matthew?
Yeah.
Jimmy's in your circle, I'm sure.
Yeah, what I'm saying is we need to not have people leave the church first.
Yeah.
That the church
Because-
can change to suit them.
Well, they have, let's face it, if you want, one of the great power blocks on the planet is the
Right.
church.
Yeah.
That's
Convert the
one of
church
the
from within.
terrible
17%
tragedies that's
of
happened
the
to women
population.
is also the Catholic Church.
Right. Yeah.
So
They're coming around, it
Here-
sounds like, from what you're
The
saying.
Enneagram.
what I'm
remember the
saying is
Enneagram
this
these
is
days?
something that can be done with the existing power base. Because
Right. Right,
rather
right.
than
Right.
the crossover saints are wonderful, but Mary, but to start treating Mary as one
Right.
may do
That's
us
a great
more good.
idea.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So it's going to
Yeah,
take
I like that.
self-transformation from
Right.
each one of us to have the desire to go in and heal those wounds of separation, to merge those two energies together.
And see the mysticism that underlies all religions, so we don't have to have a Christian versus pagan perspective or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, when you look at the mystical tradition of every religion around the world, they all say the same thing. If you read Francis of Assisi, Hildegard of Bingen, if you read Rumi, if you read any of the great Hindu mystics, the Buddha, they all say the same thing. And it's only at the dogma where there gets to be wars. There was a war in the Middle Ages over whether or not Christ should be depicted with a beard or whether or not he had a beard. There was a battle to
He was
determine
30
such
years
a
old.
thing.
Of course he had a beard.
Yeah. So these religions. If you look at the wars that are happening on the planet today, and I characterize the war that's going on now as a religious war. It's Christianity. Bush even said it was the next crusade. It's just the latest episode in this ongoing bloodfest that's been happening since the time of Abraham. Ever since he tried to kill his son, thinking it was God and not like the dog, It's like, did I hear you right? No, it's like, so, it's based on a psychosis. And I think we have to outgrow that. And I think using the institutions that are there, morphing them into a healthy, you're a psychologist, so.
When I was a counselor at Stanford for a few years during the height of the student unrest when we were trying to stop the war, I kept walking around thinking, what if this were an educational institution?
Good
Look
question.
at the facilities.
Yeah, right.
And if you talk to Catholic priests and to nuns, they're not really against making the world a better place.
That's
they're
true.
not really
That's
against
Most of them are good
giving,
people.
Most of them are good people.
giving
Right.
women
Right.
real power.
Right.
They're merely caught in a paradigm that's too small for the reality we're in.
Bingo.
Exactly. I
Brainwash.
think
Right,
you
right.
definitely put your finger on it. And the fundamental flaw with the big three religions is their monotheism.
Right. It's
My way or the
monotheism,
highway,
right.
one
That's
true,
it.
right, and only.
And they all proselytize as
Right.
well.
Where-
Shahin Budao doesn't proselytize.
Right. Whereas actually, Catholicism has at least 4 gods that I can think of.
Right.
5 if you want to count Lucifer, and it just
Yeah,
goes
there you
on and
go.
on. They all function
Yeah,
as
right.
gods in the
Right.
classical sense of gods and goddesses.
Right.
And so this trying to cling to something that is actually not even in play, this monotheism is what has gotten us to where we are at today. One monotheistic religion trying to destroy another monotheistic religion.
Exactly.
And in terms of everyday life, this mono idea has got to go in general, in terms of monogamy.
Yeah, I was going to go there. Monogamy, right?
Yeah.
Well, but consciously, it's not just,
Yeah.
it still has to be with consciousness.
Right.
So I totally agree with everything you're saying, and I agree with what you said a few minutes ago about how whether or not what happened in the past, whether or not there were partnership cultures is academic. But I would respectfully disagree in the sense that most people very vehemently like to say, no, humans have always been violent. Violence
They've
been
always
here
eaten
ever
meat
since
and-
cavemen hit
Right,
each other over the
right,
head
right.
and dragged their women off.
Right.
And I feel like there are certain people who are coming from an academic Western intellectual perspective who need to be in the mind, and I think there's nothing wrong with the Western path of becoming more conscious from
It's
the
a
mind.
path, the mind path, right?
The Rosicrucian path is through using the conscious mind, and who might benefit from reading the evidence that there have been cultures that are characterized by mother love. In other words, there's no sort of circumcision or letting the baby cry himself to sleep from the beginning. There's a real connection between the mother and the infant, which then they don't develop violent, greedy behaviors. And some of the Neo-Reichians, notably James DeMio, who wrote a huge tome called Saharasia, which has just tons of evidence and quotes from other references about a possible theory for why this began, which predated actually monogamy and monotheism, which is that the planet began to desiccate at about 4000 BC, and that's where the Sahara Desert began to grow, and then famine began, and with famine came suffering and mothers rejecting their children, and people fighting over resources, and that's where that began, and then that spread all over the world, and then later even to the New World as some of these massive patriarchal empires spread their sort of learned violence and war all over the rest of the planet. Rather than it being just this inherent, instinctual, unavoidable, human behavior.
Well, that's what I'm on a personal crusade, is to try to get how you think about human nature. People say, oh, greed, vanity, those are human nature. So
exactly.
it's this thing, no matter what
There's
I
an
feel, it's like,
alternative.
it's like, let's strive for something better. Let's just not say, well, it's human nature to be this, to steal,
Exactly.
and let's not accept those type of things, and from ourselves and from other people as well.
There's another alternative to look at, which is, this is really the gift, to me at least, from Anodea Judith, who's saying if we look at all human cultures till now,